The nanny accidentally fell asleep in his bed, and when he saw her, something in him changed forever. Hello, let's hear another incredible story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I love narrating stories for you, so get ready. Let's start. The rain drummed steadily against the windows of Brielle Carter's small apartment in Seattle's Ballard neighborhood. Each drop a reminder of another bill she needed to pay. Her sewing machine whirred rhythmically as she finished the last stitches on Mrs. Henderson's wedding dress alterations, the delicate beadwork catching the dim light of her desk lamp. The clock on the wall showed 6:45 p.m. She had exactly 45 minutes to make it to the Whitaker residence. Just breathe," she whispered to herself, carefully hanging the completed dress. Her tiny studio apartment, which doubled as her atelier, was cramped but meticulously organized. Dress forms stood like silent sentinels in the corners, and colorful fabric swatches brightened the otherwise plain walls. A half-finished sketch of an evening gown lay on her drafting table, next to a stack of textbooks from her night classes at the Seattle Central College. Her phone buzzed with a text from the agency. Client confirmation, 7:30 p.m. arrival at Whitaker residence. Child, Noah, age 6. Father, Holden Whitaker. Duration, until 11 p.m. Brielle's stomach tightened. The Whitakers lived in one of those elegant Victorian houses in Queen Anne, the kind of place that made her second-guess accepting the job. But the agency paid well, and between her tuition payments and the rising rent on her studio space, she couldn't afford to be picky. The rain had soaked through her jacket by the time she reached the house. Standing before the immaculate three-story Victorian, with its wraparound porch and detailed trim work, Brielle felt even smaller than her 5'4" frame. She adjusted her messenger bag, checking that her sketchbook and emergency sewing kit were secure, never knowing when inspiration might strike or when a quick repair might be needed. The door opened before she could ring the bell. A tall man in a charcoal suit stood there, his presence filling the doorway. Holden Whitaker had the kind of face that belonged in architectural magazines, all clean lines and perfect angles, but there was something hollow in his green eyes, like rooms in a beautiful house where the lights had been turned off. "Miss Carter!" His voice was deep but distracted, as if his mind was already at the business meeting she'd been hired to accommodate. "Yes, Mr. Whitaker. The agency sent me." She stepped inside, trying not to drip too much on the polished hardwood floors. The foyer opened into a living room that seemed to stretch forever, with built-in bookshelves and a grand piano that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. "Noah's upstairs in his room. He's already had dinner, but he likes a story before bed at 8. Holden checked his watch. "Emergency numbers are on the fridge. I should be back by 11. A small figure appeared at the top of the stairs, clutching a worn, stuffed elephant. Noah Whitaker was all big brown eyes and unruly dark curls, watching them with the careful attention of a child who had learned to read rooms too early. "Daddy?" His voice was soft, uncertain. Something in Holden's face shifted, softened for just a moment. "Hey, buddy, this is Miss Carter. She's going to stay with you while I'm at my meeting." Brielle smiled up at Noah, noting how his small fingers tightened around the elephant. "You can call me Brielle, and who's your friend there?" "This is Edison," Noah said after a moment's hesitation. "He's an inventor elephant." "An inventor elephant? That sounds fascinating. Maybe you could tell me about his inventions later." A tiny smile tugged at the corner of Noah's mouth, and Brielle felt something in her chest loosen. Children were often easier than adults. Their pain was more honest, their joy more complete. "I really need to go," Holden said, already moving toward the door. "Noah, be good for Miss Carter." "It was nice to meet you, Mr. Whitaker," Brielle called after him, but the door was already closing. The house settled into silence, broken only by the persistent rhythm of rain against windows. Brielle looked up at Noah, who hadn't moved from his perch at the top of the stairs. "Well," she said, shrugging off her wet jacket, "Edison looks like a very distinguished elephant. I bet he'd love to see my sketchbook. I draw dresses, you know, but sometimes I draw other things, too." Noah's eyes lit up just a little. Can you draw elephants? I can try. Would you like to help me? We could give Edison a proper inventor's outfit, maybe a top hat and a monocle. Noah descended the stairs carefully. One step at a time, Edison clutched firmly against his chest. When he reached the bottom, Brielle noticed his Batman pajamas and mismatched socks, one blue, one with yellow stripes. Daddy says I have to go to bed at 8, he said, but there was a note of hope in his voice. Well, that's perfect, Brielle replied, pulling out her sketchbook. We have just enough time to design Edison's new look before bedtime. And then, maybe, if you'd like, I could tell you a story about a very special elephant I once knew. As they settled onto the plush living room rug, Brielle felt the familiar ache in her chest, the one that came whenever she encountered children who reminded her too much of her brother. But she pushed it aside, focusing instead on Noah's growing excitement as she began to sketch. She didn't know then that this rain-soaked evening would change everything, that somewhere between elephant sketches and bedtime stories, fate was setting in motion a series of events that would unravel all their carefully constructed defenses. She didn't know that later that night, exhausted from a week of double shifts and late-night classes, she would make a mistake that would crack open the door to something both terrifying and beautiful. But for now, she simply drew, letting Noah's quiet giggles fill the empty spaces of this grand house, while outside, the Seattle rain continued its steady symphony against the windows. After tucking Noah into bed, his breathing now soft and steady, Brielle found herself drawn to the quiet solitude of the house. The rain had gentled to a misty drizzle, casting ethereal shadows through the Victorian windows. She gathered their sketches from the living room floor, Edison the elephant now properly attired in his inventor's gear, complete with a set of mechanical wings Noah had insisted upon. The house seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for something. Framed photographs lined the hallway, catching Brielle's attention. She moved closer, drawn to their stories. Noah as a toddler, all dimpled smiles and wild curls. Holden in a graduation gown, younger and lighter somehow. And then a woman with auburn hair and a radiant smile, holding a newborn Noah. Her eyes sparkled with a joy so profound it made Brielle's chest ache. And that must be his mother, she whispered to herself, understanding now the hollow look in Holden's eyes, the careful way Noah watched the world. Loss left traces, like invisible threads woven through a family's fabric. She knew that better than most. A sound from upstairs startled her. Noah's voice, small and distressed, called out in his sleep. Brielle hurried up the curved staircase, her hand trailing along the polished banister. The boy was tangled in his sheets. Edison clutched tightly to his chest. "Shh, it's okay," she soothed, sitting gently on the edge of his bed. "You're safe." Noah's eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to recognition. "I had a bad dream," he mumbled, "about the day Mommy went away." Brielle's heart clenched. She knew about dreams like that, the ones that brought back moments you tried to forget. "Would you like to hear a secret about bad dreams?" she asked softly. Noah nodded, his grip on Edison loosening slightly. "Sometimes, when I have scary dreams, I imagine I'm designing the most beautiful dress in the world. I think about every detail, the sparkly beads, the flowing fabric, the way it would move when someone dances, and slowly the scary parts fade away. Can you show me?" Noah's voice was barely a whisper. Brielle pulled out her sketchbook again, moving to sit in the reading chair near his bed. The lamp cast a warm glow as her pencil began to dance across the paper. "See, we start with silk, the softest silk in the world. And here, along the hem, we'll add tiny stars that catch the light." She talked quietly, weaving a story with her sketches until Noah's breathing deepened once more. Standing to leave, she noticed a small photo frame on his nightstand. The same woman from downstairs, this time reading to a younger Noah, both of them laughing at some shared joke. Exhaustion suddenly hit Brielle like a wave. She'd been up since 5 that morning, alternating between classes and client fittings. The reading chair looked impossibly inviting. Just 5 minutes, she thought, sinking into its plush comfort, just to rest my eyes. The next thing she knew, she was jolting awake to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind. This wasn't her apartment. This wasn't her. Panic seized her as she realized where she was. Holden Whittaker stood in the doorway, his silhouette stark against the hallway light. "I'm so sorry." Brielle stumbled to her feet, her sketchbook falling to the floor with a soft thud. "I didn't mean to. I was just helping Noah with a nightmare, and I must have—" But Holden wasn't looking at her. His gaze was fixed on the fallen sketchbook, now open to her dress design. He moved into the room, picking it up with careful hands. The moonlight filtering through the window caught his face, and something there made Brielle pause. "These are good," he said quietly, turning pages with a gentleness that surprised her. "The detail work, the way you've captured the movement." He stopped at a sketch of Noah and Edison, their afternoon's collaboration. "He hasn't drawn with anyone since—" The unfinished sentence hung in the air between them. Brielle watched as Holden's fingers traced the edge of the paper, following the lines of his son's happiness. "He's very creative," she offered softly. "The mechanical wings were his idea." Holden looked up then, really seeing her for the first time. The hollow look in his eyes had shifted, replaced by something questioning, almost vulnerable. "You're an artist." "A student, actually. Fashion design at Seattle Central. The babysitting helps pay for classes." She didn't know why she was telling him this, why her heart was suddenly racing. "And you make dresses?" "Yes, in my studio. Well, my apartment that pretends to be a studio." She attempted a small laugh, trying to ease the strange tension that had settled over the room. Noah stirred in his sleep, drawing both their attention. Holden moved to adjust his blanket, his movements practiced but tender. In the moonlight, Brielle caught a glimpse of the man he must have been before loss carved those hollow spaces, before silence became his closest companion. "You should go home," he said finally, handing back her sketchbook. "It's late, and the rain's getting worse." "Of course. I'm sorry again about falling asleep." "It won't happen. I'll call you a car," he interrupted, already pulling out his phone. "It's not safe to walk in this weather." The gesture surprised her. "That's not necessary. I can—" "Please." The word was quiet but firm. "Consider it an apology for running late." Later, sitting in the warmth of the hired car, watching raindrops race down the window, Brielle tried to make sense of the evening. Of Noah's trust, of Holden's unexpected gentleness with her sketches, of the way the house had felt both haunted and healing. Her phone buzzed, a message from the agency about her next assignment, but it was the image of Holden Whittaker in the moonlight, touching her drawings of his son with such careful wonder, that followed her into her dreams that night. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice whispered that she was already breaking her cardinal rule. Don't get involved. Don't complicate things. The rain, ever present in Seattle, continued its steady rhythm as if it knew something she didn't, that some complications were worth the risk, and that sometimes the most important stories began with falling asleep in exactly the wrong place at exactly the right time. 2 weeks after that rainy night, Brielle found herself becoming a regular fixture at the Whittaker house. The agency had called multiple times, always with the same request. Mr. Whittaker specifically asked for her. She told herself it was just because Noah had taken to her, but sometimes she caught Holden watching her when she sketched with his son, his expression unreadable. Today, she was running late. Her morning client had been particularly demanding about her wedding dress alterations, and Seattle's persistent autumn drizzle had turned into a proper downpour by the time she reached Queen Anne. Rushing up the street, she nearly collided with an elderly woman struggling with an umbrella outside the house next door to the Whittakers. "Oh, I'm so sorry." Brielle steadied the woman, helping her right the umbrella. "Are you all right?" "Quite all right, dear." The woman's eyes crinkled warmly behind her glasses. Though this weather does make one question why we live in Seattle." She paused, studying Brielle's face. "You're Noah's new sitter, aren't you? I've seen you coming and going." "Yes, I'm Brielle Carter." "June Richmond," the woman offered. "I've been watching that house for 30 years now. It's good to see some light coming back into it." She gestured to a paper bag she'd dropped. "Would you help an old seamstress carry her fabric inside? These bones aren't what they used to be." Brielle's eyes lit up at the mention of sewing. "You're a seamstress, retired now, but I spent 40 years making everything from wedding gowns to theater costumes." June led the way to her front porch, fumbling with her keys. "Come in for a moment, dear. You look half drowned." The interior of June's house was a warm chaos of fabric swatches, old photographs, and the unmistakable scent of fresh-baked cookies. Brielle's eyes were immediately drawn to a vintage dress form in the corner, draped with an exquisite beaded gown. "That was my last commission," June said, following her gaze. "For the Opera House, 15 years ago. Now I mostly make quilts and spoil the neighborhood children with cookies." She disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a plate of chocolate chip cookies and 2 steaming mugs of tea. "It's beautiful," Brielle breathed, moving closer to examine the beadwork. "The detail is incredible. You have a good eye." June settled into an armchair, gesturing for Brielle to sit. Tell me, what brings a young designer, and don't look surprised, I can spot one of my own kind, to babysitting?" Brielle accepted the tea gratefully. "School tuition, mostly, and trying to keep my small studio running." She hesitated, then added, "It's not just about the money anymore, though Noah is special." "That he is." June's expression softened. "The poor child hasn't had it easy since Claire passed." "Claire?" Brielle asked, though she knew she was referring to Noah's mother. "A beautiful soul. She used to bring Noah here for cookies and stories. Always said this house reminded her of her grandmother's." June's eyes grew distant. "She was working on a children's book, you know, about a little boy and his inventor elephant." Brielle's hand, reaching for a cookie, froze mid-air. "Edison," June nodded. "Claire drew the most wonderful illustrations. She had such talent." She stood slowly, moving to a bookshelf. "I think I still have her sketchbook somewhere. She left it here the last time." Her voice trailed off as she searched the shelves. A knock at the front door interrupted them. Through the window, Brielle could see Holden on the porch, Noah beside him. Her eyes flew to the clock. She was 15 minutes late. "And oh no," she started to rise, but June waved her back down. "Holden, Noah, come in out of that rain," June called out, opening the door. "I've kidnapped your sitter for tea and cookies." Noah's face lit up at the mention of cookies, but Holden remained in the doorway, looking uncertain. Brielle noticed he was holding an umbrella over Noah, letting himself get wet. "Miss Carter, I was worried when you didn't arrive," he said formally, but there was relief in his voice that made her chest tighten. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Whitaker. I ran into June and—" "She's been admiring my old opera house gown," June interrupted, ushering them inside. "Did you know she's a designer, studying at Seattle Central, just like Claire did?" The room went very still. Holden's eyes met Brielle's, something flickering in their depths. Noah, oblivious to the tension, had already made his way to the cookies. "I didn't know that," Holden said quietly. June looked between them, a knowing glint in her eye. "Noah, come help me find that picture book I promised you last week. I think it's in the study." She steered the boy toward the hallway, leaving Brielle and Holden alone with the rain drumming against the windows. "I should have called when I was running late," Brielle said, setting down her tea. "I didn't mean to worry you." Holden moved further into the room, his gaze caught by the opera house gown. "Claire used to sketch dresses too," he said, almost to himself. "She had notebooks full of designs, but after Noah was born, she switched to children's illustrations." He touched the beaded fabric gently. "She would have loved this." Brielle watched him, seeing the grief etched in the lines of his face, but also something else, a softening around the edges, as if sharing this memory was letting light into those hollow spaces she'd noticed that first night. "Mr. Whitaker," she began, but he turned to her with an unexpected intensity. "Holden," he said. "Please, call me Holden." The sound of Noah's laughter drifted from the study, followed by June's warm chuckle. The rain seemed to soften, becoming a gentle backdrop to this moment of connection. "Holden," Brielle repeated softly, and something shifted in the air between them. A door opening, perhaps, or a wall beginning to crumble. From her armchair, June's abandoned teacup grew cold, the steam rising like memories into the quiet room. And somewhere, in a drawer in her study, Claire's sketchbook waited, a bridge between past and present that would soon change everything. But for now, there was just this: the sound of rain, a child's laughter, and two people standing among beaded memories, learning that sometimes healing begins with the simple act of speaking each other's names. Brielle's tiny apartment felt especially cramped that evening, dress forms casting long shadows in the fading October light. She sat at her sewing machine, trying to focus on the bridesmaid dress alterations due tomorrow. But her mind kept drifting back to the Whittaker house, to June's revelations about Claire, to the way Holden had looked at her when he asked her to use his first name. A sharp knock at her door startled her from her reverie. Through the peephole, she saw a familiar face that made her heart sink. Richard Carter, her father's lawyer. "Brielle," he said when she opened the door, his expensive suit out of place in her modest building. "Your father asked me to check on you." "You mean, make sure I'm still keeping quiet," she replied, but stepped aside to let him in. Her father hadn't spoken to her directly in almost 2 years, not since that night. Richard surveyed her apartment with barely concealed disapproval. "He's concerned about you. The investigation is still ongoing, and your brother's case—" "Don't," Brielle's voice cracked. "Don't talk about Marcus like he's a case. He was my brother." "Is your brother," Richard corrected gently. "We don't know that he's—" "Why are you really here?" Brielle interrupted, unable to bear the familiar dance of maybes and might-haves. "Your father saw your name listed as a regular sitter for the Whittaker family." Richard's tone shifted, became more businesslike. "And he wants to make sure you understand the importance of discretion. The Carter family name is more important than the truth." Brielle felt the old anger rising. "More important than Marcus. You know it's more complicated than that." Richard placed an envelope on her drafting table. "Your father asked me to give you this. He's concerned about your financial situation." Brielle stared at the envelope, knowing it contained a check, knowing too that accepting it meant accepting silence. "I don't want his money. Brielle, be reasonable. Your student loans, this—" He gestured at her makeshift studio. "Business venture. You can't keep running forever." "I'm not running," she said quietly. "I'm living, and I'm done pretending that night never happened." Richard sighed, straightening his tie. "Just think about it, and please, be careful with the Whittakers. That family has been through enough without getting tangled in our situation." After he left, Brielle sank onto her bed, her hands shaking. She reached for her phone, scrolling to the text she'd received earlier from Holden. "Noah asked if you could come to his school's art fair tomorrow. No pressure, but it would mean a lot to him." She'd already said yes, already felt the warmth of Noah's excitement when she'd told him during their afternoon session, but now Richard's visit had cast a shadow over everything, reminding her that she wasn't free to simply follow her heart. She had secrets too, heavy ones that threatened to crack the delicate foundation of trust she was building with the Whittakers. Her phone buzzed again, June this time. "Found something you might want to see. Come by before Noah's art fair tomorrow." Brielle typed back a quick agreement, then turned to the dress she'd been working on. Sewing had always been her escape, the one place where she could lose herself in the precision of stitches and the flow of fabric. But tonight, even that offered little comfort. The next morning dawned surprisingly clear, the autumn sun casting warm light across Seattle's hills. Brielle arrived at June's house early, her heart beating a little faster when she saw Holden's car in his driveway next door. June answered her door with a knowing smile. "Perfect timing. I just put on coffee." She led Brielle to her study, where a box sat on the desk. I found Claire's sketchbook, and something else I think you should see. The sketchbook was bound in soft blue leather, its pages filled with whimsical illustrations of Noah's beloved Edison and other characters. But it was the loose photograph that fell from between its pages that caught Brielle's breath. It showed a group of students outside Seattle Central's design building. Claire stood in the center, her auburn hair catching the light, but it was the figure beside her that made Brielle's world tilt. A young man, with her same dark curls and bright smile, his arm thrown casually around Claire's shoulders. "Marcus Carter," June said softly, watching Brielle's face. He was in Claire's program. They were quite close friends, actually. She was devastated when he disappeared. Brielle's fingers trembled as she touched the photograph. Her brother, looking so alive, so unaware of what was coming. I didn't know. I thought you might be related. You have his smile. When you mentioned Seattle Central, June paused. Claire used to say Marcus was the most talented designer in their year, that he saw beauty in unexpected places. A knock at the front door made them both jump. Through the study window, Brielle could see Holden on the porch, Noah bouncing excitedly beside him in his school clothes. "Miss Carter, you came early!" Noah's voice carried through the house as June went to let them in. Brielle quickly slipped the photograph into her bag, her mind racing. How could she tell them? How could she not? The weight of her family's secrets pressed against her chest, even as Noah burst into the study and threw his arms around her waist. "And ready for the art fair?" he asked, beaming up at her. "I made something special." She forced a smile, aware of Holden watching her from the doorway. He dressed more casually today, in dark jeans and a grey sweater that softened his usual architectural precision. "I wouldn't miss it for anything." But as they walked to his car, June's knowing gaze following them, Brielle felt the photograph burning in her bag like a live coal. She had wanted to keep her world separate, to be just Noah's sitter and maybe, somehow, something more to Holden. But the past had other plans, weaving connections she never could have imagined. The Seattle sun continued to shine, unusual and bright, as if trying to illuminate all the shadows where secrets lived. And in her mind, Marcus's smile in that photograph seemed to ask the question she'd been avoiding for 2 years. When does the truth hurt more than silence? And when does silence become its own kind of betrayal? The elementary school's hallways buzzed with excitement, artwork covering every available surface in a rainbow explosion of creativity. Noah walked between Brielle and Holden, holding both their hands as he led them to his classroom. The casual intimacy of it, this almost family moment, made Brielle's heart ache with both joy and guilt. "It's right there," Noah pointed to a display near the windows. "Miss Wilson said we should draw something that makes us happy." Brielle felt Holden stiffen beside her as they approached Noah's artwork. There, rendered in bright colors and careful detail, was a drawing of the three of them, Holden, Brielle, and Noah, sitting on the living room floor with Edison the elephant, all of them smiling. In the background, through carefully drawn windows, rain fell from purple clouds. "That's beautiful, buddy." Holden's voice was rough with emotion. "Look, I drew Edison with his wings, like in Brielle's sketch." Noah bounced excitedly. "And see the rain. It's like the night Brielle first came to our house." Brielle couldn't speak. The photograph of Marcus and Claire felt heavier than ever in her bag as she stared at Noah's innocent portrayal of their growing connection. She'd become more than just a babysitter to this little boy. She'd become part of his concept of happiness. "Noah!" A small girl with braids called from across the room. "Come see what I drew." "Can I go?" Noah asked, looking between them. "Of course," Holden nodded, watching his son weave through the crowd of parents and children. Left alone, they stood in silence before the drawing. Brielle could feel the warmth of Holden's arm barely touching hers, could sense the tension radiating from him. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "If this makes you uncomfortable—" "It doesn't." Holden turned to face her, his green eyes intense. "That's what scares me." Before she could respond, a sharp voice cut through the busy classroom. "Holden, I thought I might find you here. An elegant woman in her 50s approached them, her perfectly styled hair and designer outfit marking her as someone who belonged in Queen Anne's most exclusive circles. Brielle recognized her from a photo in the Whittaker house. Holden's mother. Mother? Holden's posture straightened imperceptibly. I didn't know you were back from Palm Springs. Clearly. Her eyes flicked to Brielle, then to Noah's drawing. Something cold entered her expression. And who might this be? Brielle Carter, she offered, extending her hand. I'm Noah's babysitter. Yes, I know. Mrs. Whittaker's handshake was brief and dismissive. The agency mentioned they'd found someone suitable. The way she said suitable made it clear she thought Brielle was anything but. Actually, I'm also a design student at... How lovely, Mrs. Whittaker interrupted, turning to Holden. Darling, have you given any thought to what we discussed about Brighton Academy? Their winter semester begins in January, and they've agreed to hold Noah's spot. We've been over this. Holden's voice held a warning edge. Noah's happy at this school. He needs structure, proper guidance, especially now that he's... She glanced at the drawing again. Developing attachments. Brielle felt sick. The weight of secrets, hers, the Whittakers, the past that seemed determined to surface, pressed in on her. She needed air. Excuse me, she managed, turning quickly away. She made it to the hallway before a hand caught her arm. Brielle, wait! Holden had followed her. I'm sorry about my mother. She's protective. She's right to be. The words spilled out before she could stop them. I'm just the babysitter. I shouldn't be in Noah's drawings. I shouldn't be. You're not just anything. His voice was low, urgent. These past weeks, you've brought something back to our house that I thought was gone forever. Noah smiles again. He draws. He tells stories. He's healing. You don't know me, Brielle whispered, the photograph in her bag like a burning brand. There are things about my family, about my past. Then tell me. He stepped closer, and suddenly the busy school hallway seemed to fade away. And whatever it is, Brielle, just... Daddy! Noah's voice broke the moment. He ran up, clutching a paper in his hands. Miss Wilson wants you to see my other drawing, the one about memories. Holden stepped back, his professional mask sliding back into place, though his eyes still held questions. They followed Noah back to a different display, where a second drawing hung. This one showed a woman with auburn hair reading to a small Noah, while Edison sat nearby. It's Mommy, Noah said quietly. From the picture in my room. Brielle watched Holden kneel beside his son, watched them share this moment of remembrance, and felt the truth burning in her throat. Claire's sketchbook, the photograph, Marcus, everything connected in ways she never could have imagined. Mrs. Whittaker appeared beside them, her hand possessively on Noah's shoulder. Perhaps we should all have dinner tonight, she suggested, though her tone made it clear it wasn't really a suggestion. To discuss Noah's future properly. I have class tonight, Brielle said quickly, grateful for the excuse. Another time then. Mrs. Whittaker's smile didn't reach her eyes. We have so much to discuss. As they left the school later, the autumn sun had disappeared behind heavy clouds. Noah held his drawings carefully, chattering about his friends' artwork, while Holden walked silently beside them. At the car, he helped Noah into his booster seat, then turned to Brielle. About dinner with my mother. It's fine, she cut him off. Really, I understand. But she didn't understand. Not the way her heart raced when he looked at her. Not the way Noah's drawing made her feel both blessed and terrified. Not the way Claire and Marcus's shared past seemed to be pushing her toward a truth she wasn't ready to face. The first drops of rain began to fall as she watched them drive away. Seattle's familiar grey had returned, as if the brief sunshine had been just a reminder that some moments of clarity couldn't last. In her bag, Marcus smiled eternally from the photograph, while in her mind, Noah's drawing of their makeshift family hung like a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. She pulled out her phone and, before she could change her mind, typed a message to June. I need to know more about Claire and Marcus, please. The response came quickly. Come over tonight. Some stories need to be told in person. Above her, the rain began to fall in earnest, as if the sky itself understood that some truths could only emerge in Seattle's endless grey, where secrets and hope mingled like water and light. June's house glowed like a beacon in the deepening twilight. Brielle stood on the porch, watching raindrops catch the golden light from the windows, gathering her courage. Before she could knock, the door opened. "I made tea," June said simply, as if they were meeting for a casual visit rather than to unravel the threads of a past that seemed determined to entangle itself with the present and something stronger, if we need it. Inside, the familiar chaos of fabric and memories felt different in the evening light. June had cleared her coffee table, where Claire's blue sketchbook now lay alongside a worn photo album and what looked like old letters. Before we start," June settled into her armchair, fixing Brielle with a knowing look. "Tell me what happened at the art fair." Brielle sank onto the couch, the day's emotions catching up with her. "Noah drew us, Holden, him and me, like we were—" She trailed off. "Family," June supplied gently. "Mrs. Whitaker showed up." Brielle twisted her hands in her lap. "She wants to send Noah to some private academy. She looked at me like I was a threat." June poured tea from a delicate porcelain pot. "Eleanor Whitaker has always been protective of her position in society. Even Claire struggled with her approval, and Claire came from the right kind of family." "Did she?" Brielle asked, reaching for the blue sketchbook. "Know about Marcus, I mean?" June was quiet for a moment, stirring honey into her tea. Claire and Marcus were more than just classmates. They were collaborating on a children's clothing line for their final project, something about making clothes that told stories. She opened the photo album, pointing to a series of sketches. These were some of their designs. Brielle leaned closer. The sketches showed whimsical children's outfits, each one telling a story through clever details and hidden elements. A raincoat that revealed a secret garden pattern when wet, a dress with pockets full of painted stars. And there, in the corner of each design, two signatures, Claire Anderson and Marcus Carter. They were brilliant together, June continued. Marcus had this way of taking Claire's storybook imagination and making it technically possible. And Claire, she helped Marcus believe in magic again. Again, Brielle's voice cracked. June's eyes softened with understanding. Your father's company had already chosen Marcus's career path, hadn't they? All those expectations weighing on him. He was supposed to take over the business development division. Brielle's hands shook as she turned pages in the album. Not waste time with frivolous fashion dreams, as our father called it. The night Marcus disappeared, June said carefully, he was supposed to meet Claire here. They had a breakthrough on their project, something about a new way to integrate LED lights into children's nightwear, making constellations that really twinkled. She reached for an envelope, yellowed with age. Claire waited for hours. When he didn't show, she left this. Brielle opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a note in unfamiliar handwriting. Marcus, I think we've finally cracked it. The sample works perfectly. Real constellations in fabric, just like we dreamed. Your engineering mind and my silly stories. We make quite a team. I know things are difficult with your family right now, but please don't give up. Your designs have magic in them. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Claire, she never saw him again, June said softly. A week later, she met Holden at a charity event. Life moved on, as it tends to do. But she kept all of this, even after marriage, after Noah. She said it reminded her that magic was real. Brielle stared at the note, her vision blurring. Did anyone ever ask her about that night? The police did, of course. But Claire said Marcus had seemed excited on the phone, talking about finally standing up to your father. June hesitated. Brielle, what really happened that night? The words that had been locked inside her for 2 years finally spilled out. There was a fight. Marcus told our father he was dropping out of the business program, that he and Claire had investors interested in their children's line. She took a shaky breath. Father was furious, said Marcus was throwing away generations of Carter legacy for a foolish dream. Marcus stormed out, and then nothing. His car was found at Discovery Park 2 days later, but no sign of him. And your father, what did he say? That Marcus probably just needed time to come to his senses. He shut down any suggestion of foul play, used his connections to keep the investigation limited. Bitterness crept into Brielle's voice. A week later, he announced that Marcus had decided to pursue opportunities abroad, all very neat and tidy. But you don't believe that. Marcus would never. Brielle stood abruptly, moving to the window. The rain had intensified, drumming against the glass. He would never just leave, not without saying goodbye, not without his designs. He had a whole notebook full of ideas that he carried everywhere. It wasn't in his car. It wasn't in his apartment. It just vanished, like him. A sudden knock at the door made them both jump. Through the rain-streaked window, Brielle caught a glimpse of a familiar silhouette. "Holden!" June moved to the door. "Is everything all right?" He stepped inside, rain dripping from his coat. "Noah's with my mother. He was upset after the art fair, asking for—" His eyes found Brielle, then moved to the scattered photos and letters on the coffee table. "What's all this?" "Holden," June said carefully, "I think there's something you need to see." But before she could continue, Brielle's phone buzzed, a text from Richard. "Your father knows you've been asking questions about that night. Don't force his hand, Brielle. Some secrets are better left buried." The room seemed to tilt. Brielle grabbed her bag, nearly knocking over June's teacup. "Then I have to go." "Brielle, wait." Holden reached for her, but she was already moving past him. "I'm sorry," she whispered, not sure if she was apologizing for leaving or for the truths she couldn't bring herself to share. The rain enveloped her as she ran, Seattle's endless grey, a fitting backdrop for the storm in her heart. Behind her, she could hear Holden calling her name, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Because the past wasn't just catching up anymore. It was threatening to destroy everything she'd come to care about. And somewhere in the city, a father's secrets and a brother's dreams lay hidden, waiting to be uncovered, while a little boy's drawing of an almost family hung in a bright classroom, asking questions that no one was ready to answer. The next 3 days passed in a blur of ignored calls and sleepless nights. Brielle threw herself into her work, staying late at the college's design studio, taking extra alterations jobs, anything to keep her mind off the way Holden had called after her in the rain, the way June's revelations about Claire and Marcus haunted her dreams. The agency had called twice to ask about her availability for the Whitakers. Both times, she'd made excuses. But on the 4th morning, as Seattle's perpetual autumn rain turned to an unseasonable sleet, her phone lit up with a text that stopped her heart. "Noah's sick. He's asking for you. Please." It wasn't from Holden, but from June. "He has a high fever." Eleanor's beside herself. "And Holden, he needs someone. They're at Seattle Children's." Brielle's hand shook as she gathered her things. The last time she'd been in a hospital. No. She couldn't think about that night, about Marcus, about the way her father had commanded her to stay silent. Noah needed her. The pediatric ward was a maze of bright murals and worried faces. She found them in a private room. Noah small and pale against the white sheets, Holden looking lost in a chair beside him, and Eleanor Whitaker standing by the window like a sentinel. "What are you doing here?" Eleanor's voice was ice. But before Brielle could respond, Noah's eyes fluttered open. "Brielle." His voice was weak, but his smile was real. "You came." "Of course I did, buddy." She moved to his bedside, opposite Holden. "Someone has to make sure Edison isn't getting into trouble." "He's right there." Noah pointed weakly to the stuffed elephant propped against his pillow. "He's been protecting me." Holden stood abruptly. "Mother, could you give us a moment?" "Absolutely not. This is hardly appropriate. Please." Something in his tone made Eleanor pause. After a long moment, she gathered her designer handbag and swept from the room, though Brielle could feel her watching through the door's window. In the relative privacy that followed, Brielle reached for Noah's hand, careful of the IV line. "How are you feeling, brave inventor?" "Hot and cold." And my throat hurts. His small fingers curled around hers. Can you tell me a story? Like the night I had bad dreams. Noah, maybe Miss Carter should... Holden started, but Noah interrupted. Please, Daddy, the one about the dress with stars. Brielle's eyes met Holden's across the bed. In them, she saw exhaustion, worry, and something else, a question he hadn't asked. Drawing a shaky breath, she began, Once upon a time, there were two young designers who believed in magic. She told them about the dress that held constellations, weaving Marcus and Claire's design into a fairy tale. Noah drifted in and out of sleep as she spoke, his fever-warm hand still holding hers. When she finished, Holden was staring at her with an intensity that made her chest ache. That wasn't just a story, was it? He asked quietly. Before she could answer, a nurse entered to check Noah's vitals. In the momentary distraction, Brielle slipped into the hallway, needing space to breathe, but Holden followed. Brielle, wait! His voice was rough with fatigue. About what I saw at June's. The photos, Claire's sketchbook. I can't. She wrapped her arms around herself. Please, I can't talk about this now. Then when? He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the worry etched around his eyes. You disappear for days. And then Noah gets sick, and all I could think was what? That I needed you here. The words seemed to surprise him as much as her. That we needed you here. A throat cleared behind them. Eleanor Whittaker stood with a doctor, her expression carefully controlled. And if you're quite finished, the doctor has Noah's test results. The diagnosis was strep throat, complicated by a severe tonsil infection. Surgery would be needed soon. As the doctor explained the procedure, Brielle watched Holden's face grow more strained, saw the way his hands clenched at his sides. I'll make arrangements to transfer him to Boston Children's, Eleanor announced after the doctor left. Dr. Richardson there is the finest pediatric surgeon. No, Holden's voice was firm. Noah stays here, with doctors he knows, in a city he knows. Darling, be reasonable. After everything that happened with Claire, you can't just... Mother. The warning in his tone was clear, but Eleanor wasn't finished. You're letting your judgment be clouded, first by this babysitter. She gestured dismissively at Brielle. And now, with Noah's health, Claire would want Noah to feel safe, Brielle interrupted, surprising herself. She would want him surrounded by love, not shipped off to strange doctors because they have fancier credentials. The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor's face went white with fury. How dare you presume to know what Claire would want? Who do you think you are? She's right. Holden's quiet words cut through the tension. Claire would want Noah here. And so do I. Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. Fine. But we need to discuss your choices. Holden, the board is already concerned about your focus on the Thompson project, and now this involvement. The board? Brielle looked between them. What does the board have to do with any of this? Nothing. Holden ran a hand through his hair. It's not important. But Eleanor smiled, the expression sharp as cut glass. Oh, but it is. You see, Miss Carter, my son isn't just any architect. He's the CEO of Whittaker Development, and certain relationships could be seen as inappropriate, especially given your family's current situation. Brielle felt the blood drain from her face. What do you know about my family? Enough? Eleanor adjusted her pearls with precision. Enough to know that the daughter of William Carter, especially one with such complicated family history, has no place in my son's life or my grandson's. Mother, that's enough. Holden stepped between them, but the damage was done. Brielle's world narrowed to a single, horrible realization. Eleanor knew about Marcus, which meant she had connections to Brielle's father, which meant, I have to go. The words came out strangled. Brielle, please. Holden reached for her, but she backed away. Tell Noah. Her voice cracked. Tell him I'll come back. I promise. She ran again, but this time the tears came freely. In her pocket, her phone buzzed with another text from Richard. Your father wants to meet. Tomorrow. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Behind her, Through the hospital's automatic doors, she heard Holden call her name one last time, but the sleet had turned back to rain, and Seattle's grey swallowed both the sound and her breaking heart. In Noah's room, Edison the elephant sat guard over a sleeping child's dreams, while somewhere in the city, the truth about two young designers who believed in magic waited to be uncovered, a truth that could either heal two broken families or shatter them completely. The Carter Industries building towered over downtown Seattle, its glass facade reflecting the storm clouds gathering overhead. Brielle stood in the marble lobby, her reflection fractured across polished surfaces, feeling like the scared teenager she'd been the last time she was here, the night Marcus disappeared. Richard waited by the private elevators, his expression grave. "He's in the boardroom." A pause. "Brielle, whatever happens, remember he's still your father." The ride to the top floor was silent, each soft chime marking another floor closer to a confrontation she'd been avoiding for 2 years. But now, with Noah in the hospital and Eleanor's threats hanging in the air, she couldn't run anymore. William Carter stood at the window, his silver hair and impeccable suit a stark contrast to the darkening sky beyond. He didn't turn when she entered.
"I expected this phase of rebellion to pass," he said finally. "The design school, the little sewing business, but involving yourself with the Whitakers." Now he faced her, his eyes, so like Marcus's, cold. That was a step too far. "Did Eleanor call you?" Brielle's voice was steadier than she felt. "Or do you have someone watching me? I protect this family's interests, something your brother never understood." "Don't!" Anger gave her strength. "Mo, don't talk about Marcus like he's just another failed investment. He made his choice." William moved to the long boardroom table, where a familiar leather-bound notebook lay. "Just like you're making yours." Brielle's heart stopped. That's Marcus's design book. Where did you—" "Found in his car at Discovery Park. The police returned it to me, naturally." He opened it, revealing pages of sketches, technical drawings, and notes in Marcus's distinctive hand. Such talent, wasted on children's clothes. And look here. He turned to the final pages. His last entry, the night he disappeared. Brielle approached slowly, drawn by the sight of her brother's writing. The page showed the constellation dress design, covered in technical notes about LED integration and fabric conductivity. In the margin, Marcus had written, "Final meeting with investors tomorrow. No turning back now. Sorry, Dad, but some dreams are worth fighting for." "He never made it to that meeting," William said quietly. "Such a shame." Something in his tone made Brielle look up sharply. "What did you do?" "I offered him a choice, the family legacy or his artistic pursuits." William's fingers traced the page. "He chose poorly." "What does that mean?" Brielle's voice shook. "Father, what did you do to Marcus?" "Nothing he didn't bring on himself." William closed the notebook. "The trust fund, the position at the company, the Carter name. All he had to do was give up this foolishness. But he was determined to embarrass the family. So you, what? Had him followed, threatened him." "I protected our reputation." William's voice hardened. "Just as I'm prepared to do now." "What's that supposed to mean?" "The Whitaker boy, Noah, such a shame about his condition. I understand Seattle Children's has an unfortunate history of medical mistakes." The threat hung in the air like poison. Brielle felt her world tilt. "You wouldn't leave the Whitakers, Brielle. End this. Whatever it is. Go back to your little studio, your student life. Stay quiet about Marcus." He stepped closer. "Dior, I promise you, that child's surgery will be the least of your concerns." Thunder cracked outside, making the windows rattle. Brielle's mind raced to Noah in his hospital bed, to Holden's worried eyes, to Claire and Marcus's shared dreams. Something inside her, something that had been bending for 2 years, finally snapped. "No." The word came out strong, certain. "Excuse me?" I said no. She grabbed Marcus's notebook. "You don't get to threaten any more people I love. You don't get to bury the truth anymore." William's face darkened. "Security will be here in 2 minutes."
That notebook is company property. It's evidence. Brielle backed toward the door. Of what really happened to Marcus, of what you did. She ran, clutching the notebook to her chest. The elevator was too risky. She hit the stairs, taking them two at a time, her father's voice echoing behind her. Rain lashed against the stairwell windows as she descended, each flash of lightning illuminating her way. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, June's number. She answered, gasping for breath. "I can't talk right now." Noah's fever spiked. June's voice was urgent. "They're prepping him for emergency surgery. Holden's asking for you." Brielle burst out of the stairwell into the lobby, past startled security guards. Outside, the storm had turned the afternoon dark as night. She ran through sheets of rain, Marcus's notebook protected under her jacket, her mind spinning with decisions. The hospital or the police station, Noah or justice, her brother's truth or her own heart. Thunder answered, and with it came clarity. She knew where she needed to be, knew, finally, what Claire and Marcus had understood all those years ago, that some dreams, some loves, were worth fighting for. She flagged down a taxi, giving the driver 2 addresses. "Under the police station first," she said, opening Marcus's notebook with trembling fingers. "Then Seattle Children's. And please hurry." The notebook's pages rustled with secrets finally ready to be told, while somewhere across the city, a little boy clutched his inventor elephant and waited for the person who had promised to return. Outside, Seattle's storm raged on, as if the sky itself was demanding that truth finally break free. And in the gathering dark, Brielle Carter made her choice. Not running away this time, but running toward everything that mattered, everything worth fighting for, everything worth the risk of love. Detective Lisa Chen stared at Marcus's notebook, her expression growing darker with each page she turned. The storm outside her office window had reached its peak, matching the intensity of the revelations within those pages. "These final entries," she said, looking up at Brielle, "they're not just design notes, are they?" "No." Brielle's hands trembled around her paper cup of police station coffee. Marcus was documenting everything, the threats, the surveillance, the offshore accounts he'd discovered while working in the company's business development division. "Your father wasn't just trying to stop a fashion line," Detective Chen's voice was grim. "Your brother found evidence of serious financial misconduct, and now he's threatening Noah." Brielle checked her phone again. 3 missed calls from June, 1 from Holden. "Please, I've told you everything. I need to get to the hospital. Ms. Carter, with these documents and your testimony, we can finally..." "Then do it." Brielle stood, gathering her coat. "Arrest him, investigate him, whatever you need to do. But right now, there's a little boy in surgery who needs me." Detective Chen nodded slowly. "Go. We'll have officers at the hospital, for everyone's protection." She held up Marcus's notebook. "Your brother was very brave, Brielle. He chose truth, no matter the cost." "I know." Brielle's voice caught. "That's why I have to choose love." The storm seemed to follow her taxi across the city, lightning splitting the sky in brilliant flashes. By the time she reached Seattle Children's, she was soaked again, but she barely noticed. The pediatric surgical floor was a maze of tension and hushed voices. She found June first, pacing the waiting room. "Oh, thank God." The older woman pulled her into a fierce hug. "Where have you been? They took Noah in 20 minutes ago." "Where's Holden?" "Here." His voice behind her made her turn. He looked devastated, his usual composed facade cracked wide open. Brielle, Well, Eleanor Whitaker's cold voice cut through the moment. "I suppose we shouldn't be surprised, like a bad penny, always turning up." But Brielle wasn't running anymore. She faced Eleanor squarely. "You knew, didn't you? About my father, about what really happened to Marcus. That's why you threatened me." "I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about." But Eleanor's perfectly lined lips twitched. "The board connections." Brielle's voice rose. "Carter Industries and Whitaker Development. You helped my father bury the truth about Marcus because it would have implicated your company too." "Brielle?" Holden stepped closer. "What are you saying?" Your wife's best friend. Brielle's eyes filled with tears. My brother, he found something in the company files. Something about illegal developments, environmental cover-ups. That's why he disappeared. And your mother helped hide it. Mother, Holden's voice was dangerous now. Is this true? Eleanor's composure finally cracked. Everything I did was to protect this family, our reputation, our legacy, just like William did for his. William Carter is being arrested as we speak. Brielle's words fell like stones in the quiet waiting room. I took Marcus's notebook to the police. All the evidence he collected, everything they tried to hide, it's over. You foolish girl. Eleanor's voice shook. Do you have any idea what you've done? The contracts, the partnerships? I don't care. Holden's interruption was quiet but firm. I don't care about any of it. He turned to Brielle, his green eyes intense. Tell me about Marcus and Claire. Please, I need to know. So she did. There in the surgical waiting room, while lightning flashed outside and machines beeped in distant corridors, Brielle told them everything. About Marcus and Claire's dreams of designing magical clothes for children. About the constellation dress that would light up the dark. About a brother who chose truth over family loyalty and paid the ultimate price. The night he disappeared, she finished, her voice raw. He was going to meet Claire here, at June's house, to show her their breakthrough, but he never made it. Because my father, she broke off as a sob finally escaped. Holden crossed the space between them in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms. She felt his heart racing against her cheek, felt the tremor in his hands as they held her. All this time, he whispered into her hair, you were carrying this alone. I was so afraid. She clutched his shirt. When Noah got sick, and your mother threatened, I couldn't let anything happen to him, to either of you. Mr. Whitaker. A surgeon stood in the doorway, still in scrubs. They all turned, hearts stopping. Noah made it through the surgery. The surgeon smiled. He's asking for his elephant, and for Brielle. The relief was physical, a wave that made Brielle's knees buckle. Holden's arms tightened around her, keeping her upright. Mother. Holden's voice was steel. I want your resignation on my desk tomorrow morning and a full statement to the police about what you knew about Marcus Carter. Eleanor opened her mouth to protest, but something in her son's face made her stop. Without another word, she gathered her designer bag and walked away, her heels clicking on the hospital floor, the sound of power crumbling. June? Holden turned to the older woman, who had watched everything with knowing eyes. Would you? I'll make sure she leaves. June squeezed Brielle's hand as she passed. Go see our boy. In Noah's recovery room, the storm's fury had gentled to a soft rain against the windows. The little boy looked small in the hospital bed, but his color was better, and when he saw them, his smile was pure magic. You came back, he whispered to Brielle, his voice raspy. I promised, didn't I? She took his small hand, felt Holden's arms slip around her waist. And can you tell us a story? Noah's eyes were already heavy with medication. About the dress with stars. Brielle looked up at Holden, saw in his eyes the same truth she felt in her heart. Actually, she said softly, I have an even better story. About 2 designers who believed in magic and how their dream came true in ways they never expected. Outside, the storm began to clear. Stars appearing one by one in the Seattle sky, and in a hospital room filled with love and healing, Brielle Carter finally understood what her brother had known all along, that some dreams were worth fighting for, some truths worth telling, and some loves worth every risk. 3 months later, Seattle's winter rain had softened into a gentle spring mist. Brielle stood in June's living room, making final adjustments to a small suit jacket that sparkled with tiny lights. Real constellations sewn into fabric, just as her brother and Claire had once dreamed. Hold still, buddy, she smiled at Noah, who could barely contain his excitement. We want Edison's bow tie to match your stars perfectly. Do you think Uncle Marcus would have liked it? Noah asked, touching the twinkling lights with wonder. In the months since the truth had come out, since William Carter's arrest and the subsequent investigations, they'd talked openly about Marcus, about Claire, about all the love that connected their complicated family. He would have loved it. June appeared in the doorway, wearing a dress Brielle had designed specially for tonight's event. And so would your mom. The grand reopening of the Whitaker Children's Art Center was more than just a charity gala. It was a testament to healing, to justice, to dreams reborn. In the wake of the corporate scandal, Holden had transformed his company's mission, starting with this: a space where children could create, imagine, and believe in magic. "Ready for your big reveal?" June asked, adjusting Noah's collar. The boy nodded eagerly, clutching Edison, who sported a matching light-up bow tie. "Just one more thing." Brielle opened Marcus's notebook, now returned by the police after the investigation. From between its pages, she drew out a carefully preserved sketch, Claire's original design for the constellation dress, with Marcus's technical notes in the margins. "This belongs in the gallery, right next to your artwork." Noah took the sketch with careful hands. At 6½, as he proudly told everyone, he understood more than most children his age about loss, love, and the way past and present could weave together into something beautiful. "Dad's waiting at the gallery," he announced, straightening his shoulders. "He said he has a surprise. Then we shouldn't keep him waiting." Brielle gathered her purse, catching a glimpse of herself in June's mirror. The woman who looked back, confident, loved, no longer running, barely resembled the scared girl who'd first stepped into the Whitakers' lives on a rainy Seattle night. The art center was transformed. Children's artwork lined the walls, interspersed with Claire's recovered illustrations and Marcus's design sketches. In the main gallery, a special exhibition told their story, Starlight and Dreams, the Claire Anderson and Marcus Carter collection. Holden waited by the entrance, his face softening in that way it reserved only for them. "My family," he said simply, drawing them close. "Daddy!" Noah tugged his father's sleeve. "Look, the stars are working, just like Brielle said they would." "Speaking of stars," Holden's eyes met Brielle's. "There's something I need to show you." He led them to a covered display in the center of the main gallery. With theatrical flourish, he pulled away the fabric to reveal a dress form wearing the most exquisite gown Brielle had ever seen. Constellations danced across the silk, each one telling a story, Claire's artistry and Marcus's innovation brought to life through modern technology. "How?" Brielle's voice caught. "June helped," Holden admitted. "And we found more of Claire's sketches, combined them with Marcus's notes. The tech team at the company worked for months to recreate their original design." "It's magic," Noah whispered, touching the fabric reverently. "There's more." Holden took Brielle's hand, leading her to a plaque beside the dress. She read through tears, "The Claire Anderson Marcus Carter Foundation for Children's Arts and Innovation, dedicated to two dreamers who believed in magic, and to the love that brought their dreams to life. Executive Director, Brielle Carter Whitaker, Holden." She turned to find him on one knee, holding a ring that sparkled like its own constellation. "You brought light back into our lives," he said softly. "You helped us heal, helped us believe in magic again. Noah and we want to make it official, make you part of our family in every way." "Say yes!" Noah bounced excitedly. "Please, Brielle!" June appeared with her camera, while other guests began filtering into the gallery, but Brielle barely noticed them. In her mind, she saw Marcus and Claire, young and full of dreams, sketching designs and believing in possibilities. She saw Noah's first drawing of their family, saw all the moments that had led them here. Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes!" Noah launched himself into their embrace as applause filled the gallery. June wiped tears behind her camera, and somewhere, Brielle was sure, two creative spirits were smiling. Later that night, after the successful gala, after Noah had fallen asleep still wearing his constellation suit, Brielle and Holden stood on their back porch. The Seattle sky had cleared, revealing real stars above. "And I have something for you." Holden said, handing her a small box. Inside was a key on a silver chain. What's this? The key to Claire's old studio in the house. I think it's time it became your design space. Brielle touched the key gently. Are you sure? Claire and Marcus had a dream of bringing magic to children's lives. You're making that dream real. He pulled her close. And you've given us new dreams, too. Above them, stars twinkled like the lights in Noah's suit, like the constellations in Claire and Marcus's dress, like all the dreams that refused to die. And in the quiet Seattle night, surrounded by love that had grown from loss, Brielle finally understood what her brother had written in his notebook all those years ago. Some dreams are worth fighting for. Some loves are worth the risk. And sometimes, when you're brave enough to believe in magic, the stars align in ways you never expected. Inside, Edison the elephant sat guard over Noah's dreams, his bow tie still twinkling faintly. Outside, spring rain began to fall softly. Not the stormy deluge of secrets and fear, but a gentle blessing for new beginnings. And in between, in the space where past met present and love bridged all distances, a family pieced together by chance and choice looked to the future, knowing that the greatest magic of all was the power of truth, forgiveness, and the courage to believe in second chances. The end. If you were in Brielle's shoes, would you have the courage to stand up to your powerful father and expose the truth about your brother's disappearance, even knowing it could jeopardize your relationship with the Whitakers? Or would you maintain your silence to protect your new love and the family you were building with Holden and Noah? Your participation in this channel is very important. Please share your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.